What's up, Jets fans? It's Christian from the Jets Report, and today we're going to be discussing what the Jets could do with the 34th overall pick. Now, to start off, I want to say this pick basically has similar value to a late first round pick, and it's going to be very pivotal for the New York Jets to help build their foundation and culture. So I'm looking for Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas to attack some positions of needs at this spot in the draft. And regardless of what we do in front with picks number 2 and 23, this pick, we should be addressing somewhere around corner, edge rusher, interior offensive lineman, and maybe some skill position players as well, like a receiver or a tight end. So to start off, my favorite prospect at number 34 is edge rusher Patrick Jones, who's a senior from Pitt. Patrick Jones II stands at about 6'5", 260. And to read off some of his stats, in 2019, he had 42 tackles, 8.5 sacks, and four forced fumbles when he stepped onto the scene as a full-time starter. In 2020, he had 44 tackles, 9 sacks, and 1 fumble recovery. And you have to note that this COVID affected this season, so they didn't have full training. They might have missed a few games due to cancellations, and he still put up those numbers that were better than 2019. And to go over about Patrick Jones, many consider Kwity Paye to be the best edge rusher in this class, maybe next to a guy like Gregory Rousseau. And I feel like Patrick Jones could be as good as them and has the upside to be as good as them. And he might fall a little bit later to the late first round or early second round. And Jones has a lot of value, and he comes off the edge very explosively, and he's a downhill attacking edge rusher. And he loves to use the inside spin move to get around offensive linemen to attack the quarterback. And he has an extremely high motor, which helps him succeed in the run game, even though his run game could use a little work because it is a little raw. But he has the athleticism to improve on that. And I would be very happy if the Jets draft Patrick Jones, as I could see him being an edge rusher for the next 10 years that New York really hasn't had since John Abraham a while ago. So my second prospect, I have Asante Samuel Jr., cornerback from Florida State, who's a junior. Asante Samuel is listed at 5'10", 184. In 2019, he had 48 tackles, 1 interception, and 14 pass deflections. And in 2020, he had 30 tackles, 3 interceptions, and 6 pass deflections. But this was a shortened season due to COVID, and Florida State did have many cancellations to their games. And Asante Samuel is actually son of 4-time Pro Bowl cornerback Asante Samuel Sr. And having a dad like Asante Samuel Sr. can really be beneficial to a young rookie who seems like he has the pro leadership in his family to help him succeed and make the transition easier to the pro level. And he's great. He succeeds very well in man coverage despite his little bit lack of size. And he's a great physical corner. He does lack in zone, and they don't run many zone packages at Florida State. But I could see Asante Samuel stepping in as like a rotational corner in his first year, next to guys like Bryce Hall, maybe bring in a free agent or two like a Richard Sherman, and just get him used to the scene. And then I could see him being a cornerback, one of our future in the next coming years. And although guys like J.C. Horn and Patrick Surtain, they're flashy in the beginning of the draft, I feel like Asante Samuel could be a value pick as well, like I said about Patrick Jones, and really be a core foundation of this team. And we haven't really had that shutdown corner since Revis. And I'm not saying Asante Samuel could be Revis. I mean, there's always a shot. But he would definitely provide stability at a position that has been a little weak for the past couple of years. So now moving on to the offensive side of the football, I got Pat Freiermuth, tight end, who's a junior out of Penn State. Pat Freiermuth's a big guy who's 6'5", 258. And he put up monster numbers throughout college for a tight end. In 2019, he had 43 receptions for 507 yards and 7 touchdowns. And in 2020, in a very COVID-shortened season, because the Big Ten only played about 6 to 8 games, I feel like, he had 23 receptions, 310 yards, and 1 touchdown. And as well as COVID, he was also injured in that season. He's a quality blocker, but who could play hand in the dirt and block against the run. But his specialty and his strong side of his game comes from the passing attack, where he's got great hands and great route running for a guy his size, and he could easily create separation. But he did have shoulder surgery in 2020, which could make his draft stock drop, and which why he could end up in the early second rounds, the mid-second rounds. And I could see him taking on a George Kittle role. Now, I know it's high expectations, but in the Shanahan offense that Mike LaFleur is going to be running, I feel like Freiermuth can take on that role of usage and maybe become as good as Kittle. To move on to the fourth prospect, I got Humphrey, interior offensive lineman out of Oklahoma. He's a junior, standing at 6'5", 320. Now, he's a big, wide interior offensive lineman, and he could play guard or center. And I've seen him drop on draft boards a little bit recently, but he's had a strong Senior Bowl performance, and I'm looking for him to go to the Jets at pick 34. I feel like if we pair him with a guard like Joe Thuney and have them play next to each other with Connor McGovern in the middle, or even Humphrey can play center, and Connor McGovern can play guard. We can mix around, play with combinations. But I feel like the interior offensive line would be blustered with a guy like Thuney and Humphrey running up the middle. And he's a rare left-handed center, so it might get a little time. It might take time to get used to it for a younger quarterback. Now, I think a good training camp will definitely help, and I don't see it being a huge issue. And with the fifth prospect, I have Rondale Moore, wide receiver out of Purdue. He's a junior. I absolutely love Rondale Moore. He's one of my favorite prospects in this draft. He's standing at only 5'9", 180. And in 2018, before injuries that came later, he had a monster season. Freshman year, he put up 114 receptions, 1,258 yards, and 12 TDs. I mean, that is absolutely a crazy year. And then in 2019 and 2020, he had only 35 and 29 receptions for a combined 600 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that was due to he had injury concerns in both years. In 2019, he had a more serious injury. In 2020, he just dealt with back stiffness, and then COVID cut the season short. But he's an electric player who could do anything from catch balls out of the backfield, run vertical routes to the middle. He's an electric return man, which is an underrated trait that the Jets special teams unit and Brent Boyer could really use this year. And I could see him playing a Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Kendrick Bourne, like that. Those Kyle Shanahan offenses in San Francisco, they didn't have that number one flashy big receiver. And Rondale Moore is exactly what the type of receivers they had in San Francisco. A lot of crossing routes, a lot of spread systems, using the speed. And I feel like he could fit perfectly and be a great Swiss Army knife for Mike LaFleur. And he could play outside, so he could play outside next to Denzel Mims with Crowder in the slot. And another thing I would just like to add is Curtis Samuel is also a free agent. And I feel like we could get a guy like Curtis Samuel in this situation, and he could play a similar role of Rondale Moore without the injury concerns and a little bit more of a veteran, even though he's age 24. But Rondale Moore, other than that, I absolutely love him. The injury concerns are an issue. But if he stays healthy, I think he could be the steal of this draft. I truly believe that. Not many people are talking about him, and I absolutely love him as a prospect. And lastly, I have running back Najee Harris, senior out of Alabama. Now, there's a lot of conflicting opinions. I mean, Najee Harris is a big dude, standing at 6'2", 229. He put up monstrous seasons at Alabama in both 2019 and 2020, racking up 1,200 yards and 1,400 yards on the ground in both years, and crazy amount of touchdowns. Last year, he had 26 touchdowns on the ground and 4 touchdowns through the air, so he could pass, catch, and run. And he reminds me a lot of Derrick Henry. I know they both come from Alabama, so that might be an easy comparison, but besides Najee Harris lacking a little bit more speed compared to Derrick Henry, they have a very similar downhill bruising mauler run style. Now, Najee Harris might not even be available at pick 34. This is one of those picks saying he might slide. And personally, I'm not a huge fan of taking a running back at this position because I feel like we're fine with Ty Johnson, LaMichael Pirine, and then adding a mid-round pick or a mid-level free agent veteran like a Jamal Williams. But if we do decide to get Najee Harris, he's an all-pro level talent right out of the gate. He could definitely be a Pro Bowler in his first year. And these first-round running backs, guys like Josh Jacobs, they burst out on the scene nicely, but you don't know how long they could last and how good of a value pick it is. But Najee Harris could be a special player, and I definitely would not mind taking him at 34. I feel like 23 I wouldn't really be comfortable with taking him at. But if he slips to 34, I'm all in on Najee Harris. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. I listed 6 players that I would be excited with the Jets taking at pick 34. And thank you, and as always, go Jets.